Hello everyone. Apologies, I don't have these, so it's going to be English. But if you need to slow down at any point, please do let me know. I thought I'd open with this as a opening slide before I make any intros. I think this is a nice tagline to describe the current job market, and it is hiring is on the increase despite disruption. And I'm going to try my best to not talk about COVID and the pandemic, but it has an inextricable effect on our job market that is now seeing a significant bounce back and a hugely opportunistic market, which I'm really excited about. So I thought I'd start with this. It's just for everybody who's here, who've been here a while, people who are new to the UK. There's some general social media channels to follow, a pretty large FTSE 250 recruitment business. I might just give you some general updates about giving yourself a bit of the market on a relatively low-key way, really. So, who am I? My name is Jonathan. I work in Hayes for a business, we're a global business, we're a FTSE 250 business. And my personal responsibilities, I lead on our financial services business and we work globally, which is very centric to UK markets. Albeit I will assure you that much of what we talk about today is derived from the financial services. It has a link to every single sector across the UK. And try to tailor it so it can be as broad as possible, really. So I will talk about the financial markets in London, but again, the broader market. And I think that's with a view to try and give you a roadmap as to how things are progressing. And then when we talk about it later, how you want to represent yourself and all that sort of stuff, it will provide a great level of context as to what I'm actually talking about here. But I'm hoping there's a genuine encouragement. I am going to talk about diversity and inclusion. I think the reason I'm going to talk about it is I think it's important. But I think the second reason I'm going to talk about it is it's one of the top agendas on most of your companies that you'll be talking to at the moment. It is one of their huge drivers. And so commercially, for self-interest, it's important for us to know what they're talking about and why they're talking about it. Beyond that, we'll just talk about what drives that market. We'll do a bit on CV structure. We'll do a bit on interview techniques. I think some of that might be something to learn before, some of it might be a little bit new. But if there's something in there that helps, that's the extra 1% that might steer you towards securing that next position. But apologies if you've heard it all before. And then finally, I want to sort of run through how I think is the best way to represent yourself in the market. And I think there's some little tips there that might steer you towards a path of least resistance and securing a position. Okay. So real baseline, unfortunately I did cue cards because I am definitely not as talented as a down here and I need prompts for reminding myself what's going on. So we've got some really interesting percentages here, and these percentages are, they are not invented, they are surveyed information that we've taken across a multitude of different clients within the tens of thousands across the UK. And they are both a column on the left is for our employers, on the right is employees, and I think it's a balance between the company sentiment and you as the employee. So I think there's some really interesting things there, isn't there? 64% of our companies expect their volumes to increase over the next year. Now, increase is the word there I think is important, because that's not about replacements, that's not about flat headcount. That is about 2/3 of every company in the UK to expand their operations, creating opportunities. Beyond that, not a high number, jump ahead, but the ones that aren't looking to expand, anticipate they're going to be hiring. So there's a very, very small number of companies in the UK that aren't providing opportunities, which I think is exceptionally exciting time to be looking for a new job. The final bit that the two bits I'll mention on the employee side is 93% think there is a skill shortage at some stage in their business. Now, I will talk later on about where I think the major skill shortages are in the markets. If for those that are looking maybe to retrain or whatever, or to understand better your own position, there are some real key specialisms that I think are going to drive harder, but 93% think they've got deficiencies in their business, which I think, again, just reinforces the numbers that came before. And then the really encouraging bit, and I hope my boss takes this on board, 76% of people expect their salaries to increase, which I think is just such a great thing, because whilst all the great advice about tax, it's great to earn some more money at the start, right? So on to you guys. So this is people like yourselves that have actually certainly thought on the other side. So 25% of us want to change jobs, and the drivers of why we want to change jobs are changing all the time. Now, number one will always be salary, and I really wish it wasn't, but it is. Ultimately, people always move jobs for better money, but the variables and the reasons people move jobs are changing to be closer, right? So it used to be, pay me more money, or basically, I will do anything you want. Now we're looking for lots of different things as people where we work. And one of the biggest things that people are telling us is they feel that they're moving jobs for a lack of opportunity. So our workforce are going into their roles and are thinking, who's above me? What opportunities are they offering me? What is my ability to maneuver in this company? Which I think puts a greater strain on the employer's responsibility to provide a path or a career opportunity within the firms that we work at. 61% of people that we contacted said to us that they plan to move jobs in the next 12 months, right? So this is a real alignment piece. We want people wanting to move around, and they're looking for different reasons. 61% of people we spoke to are saying they're going to move jobs, or at least would be open to it, which I think is, easy thing to say, but I think it's a really high number, and I make assurances when I say this that when I've delivered these speeches before, that number hasn't always been the case. People have usually been more settled. I think as a job market, we generally are quite conservative. We're quite low risk in terms of our careers. We want stability. So 61% is a really, really exciting number for people that are looking for opportunity, really seeing opportunity in the market. 27% said that they want to move because of salary and benefits. Now, benefits, I think, are just tangible way of talking about cash, right? Whether it's holiday, whether that's private healthcare, whatever, frankly. But it is the smallest number that's ever been. Usually, that number is close to 50%. And so when I say that people are moving jobs for different reasons now, that's a really interesting number, which is exciting when you're going into something that you can be a bit more flexy with what your drivers are and be honest about that with the person you're going to essentially work for, right? 81% though want transparency from their businesses about pay. Now, that looks to me as a real interesting statistic, because to me that's people are no longer okay with different levels having different pay. In sort of, if you say corporate structure, typically some titles that sit here in the UK, associate, AVP, VP, director, no longer are employers looking to say that they're okay with AVP in different amounts. They want pay transparency, and within that transparency, they want to know what it takes them to get to the next level, a real clearly defined path, right? Now, I don't want to overstate the ability of the employer to influence the employee every single time. However, the fact that 81% of people said they do, without us taking that into account, means that these companies are at risk if they don't really take that information on board, right? So, 2.6% increase in salary. Now, this number surprised me, and it surprised me because there's an overall salary increase across the financial services. Now, I think that is based on last year, where we've had lots and lots of challenges. I expect this number to be exponentially higher next time around. So anyone entering the job market now, they're looking for significant upticks in their salary to the point that I think this number will be closer to the 5, potentially 6 or 7% number next time around, way above inflation levels. And again, there are certain sectors, and they are more privately aligned, that are going to be affected by this number, I'd say more so, but this is a standard percentage increase based on inflation, I think. And I think that actually, when we look at the future, we will see this number jump up based on our current job market. So whilst that's the number, don't be fooled. When you are interviewing for a job, be ambitious about what salary increases that you get, because I think that there is opportunity out there. So these are the job functions I think are the most in demand. Now again, quite private sector aligned, probably more financial services aligned, but some of these within here are worth talking about. Now, I think the number one, and it's quite a staggering percentage number that the demand there is 28% of our clients want to increase their tech. Right? And that's what I mean by infrastructure, I mean tech. And so whether that's C#, Python, developers, I would even put people who are quantitative aligned on that sort of function, whether they are looking at the risks from a quant perspective or even trading on those sort of functions, but anyone with a tech-aligned function at the moment, you are in demand. Know your worth and know how you can push yourself around this market and really choose where you want to work, because tech is the #1 driver in the UK across every single sector. Do not fear if you're not a tech person. There is still opportunity. Operations, risk, tax and cyber security, I think I would put these into a bracket of corporate governance. I think I would talk about them as a protective tool. Dare I say the middle office, or I think the terminology is flexible when we talk about the middle office, but these are the functions that allow these businesses to protect themselves from regulatory fines, right? And I think we listened to the guys in tax speech and William briefly on the crypto there, and it's quite clear that our regulators are quite hot on this sort of function, right? So the businesses are really taking this on board way more than they have, and I make assurances when I say that these are the areas that outside of tech are the busiest for us, and these numbers are exciting, and they look like they're low, but they're not. These are the in-demand jobs, and the candidates in these markets are going to push. These are just a snapshot. Regardless of specialism, there is still opportunity. I really do want that to be a reinforced point the entire way through. 93% of people said they were still short in the last year. I've mentioned that before, but I'm bringing it back up again because this is what the businesses are telling us. So when we talk about you entering the job market and how you maneuver around it, I think it's really, really important for us to reinforce that point, because this is in your control. Take the advice that you want from myself or anybody else and push for it. Because when you're in a job or you're looking for a role, there is definitely opportunity out there. Right? What professionals want? These are the 3 things beyond salary. I've mentioned pay transparency, so I won't labor on it too much, but career progression is the one. Now, I think that I mentioned before about there's people not seeing the opportunity in front of them. That's okay as long as people think they're progressing. And I think the interesting thing about this is that what people often talk about career progression is a leader, is a boss, a manager who they believe in and they can learn from and can develop them. Because people aren't necessarily always looking for a salary increase. They're not necessarily looking for a better title or broader responsibility just yet. But what they don't want to be is stagnant. What they want to be is learning and pushing towards something and understand what they're pushing towards. And so I think that is an exciting time that people aren't just purely looking for salary anymore. But that is what I think that means by that, is that what are my opportunities here in the long run? And this is what the market is telling us. Flexi working. I had to include it, and again, I will not say anything more on the pandemic, but it is forced in our hand. And there are many businesses out there, much of which are shareholder owned, that don't want to spend money on teching up or allowing that to happen, because frankly, flexi working has a cost levied against it. So if that business didn't have mobile phones or laptops or infrastructure that supported our ability to allow flexi working, they wouldn't have done it. The other factor is there is businesses that need you to be in there from a protection element, whether that's because there's a protected product or a regulatory driver. They just make sure you're in the office. Now, what we've had over the last 2 years is a change, because it's forced our hand. So no longer have we got, once you've got toast, you can no longer go back and have bread. Everyone who didn't have a laptop now has it, right? And that is the truth. So those companies that no longer allowed it are not allowed it. I would say a city standard, as a rule of thumb, is that most businesses that I work with are now looking at a 60% model, where it's 3 days in the office and 2 at home. There are exemptions, and I think depending on the specialism, you need to be aware of what they are and be flexible with it. But all of them are quite choice-laden. I think the thing I would be looking for, as a person looking for a job, is I would be looking for a business that trusts me. Because I think the most important factor of flexi working who's been pushed into a company for the first time or has been running for 20 years is that the business needs to trust the employees, right? And if you don't, then you've probably got a cultural problem to address anyway. So if I'm looking at a new place, and I'm thinking about how it's going to work for me, is that am I trusted to deliver on what I'm given? If I'm not, then I think there's some other options out there for you, right? The second bit about that is that if you want to be trusted, you have to, it's a two-way street, you have to give that back, you have to pay back that opportunity, and there are people who are looking for roles, right? So it's a two-way street on trust. The way to make sure you can deliver on trust is to understand what your deliverables are in your role with a really clear defined point. I think people are often quite scared of targets or KPIs. I never have been, because they're not there to make sure that I have to do them. They're there for me to know what good looks like. Now, if I ever get to excellent, then great. And if I have a bad day, I know I need to do tomorrow. But that deliverable allows me to foster a trust relationship with my employer. And with flexi working here to stay, I advocate that everyone really thinks about that, whether it's in your current role or your next, because that is the way to develop a really, really strong relationship and allow even further flexibility down the line. So I'm sure that people in this room think, I would love to do 5 days from home. There might even be some people a bit mental like me that want to do 5 days in the office, but you allow yourself more flex by delivering on a positive flexi working model. Right? D&I. So I include this purposefully, and I want to be really clear about why. I'm a huge advocate personally, because I think it's such an obviously wonderful thing to have a diverse range of people giving very different ranges of opinions. However, commercially, businesses are making this decision, right? And the reason they're doing that is because there's such a focus on it across the market. And so there is some really lovely quotes here that I've included, and I think it's diversity is difference. Every aspect that is unique and different about individual and much more than characteristics such as gender and age. But inclusion is creating environments where people are valued and their voice and opinions are encouraged and heard. And so I think the diversity element is around the person, and the inclusion element is about the environment. And so I think when people are going into sort of look at places they want to work, they're assessing these characteristics. Is that, and I think the way that I look at it when I look at my own team, when I'm looking for that D&I utopia, is that I'm looking to think, can anybody join my team and be successful? Can they join my team and be the best that they can be? And if the answer is no, then what do I need to change to create that environment, right? And do I ever think where any business is going to get it 100% right? Unfortunately, I don't. That doesn't mean you should always strive to get there. And that's exactly what I think people are talking about consistently across the market. And for those of us who are in any of these different brackets and how we classify ourselves, it's really important to know these businesses are talking about this, and you are encouraged to play an active role in assisting their D&I agenda. So there's a nice little iceberg here up on the right, and the reason I put it as an iceberg is it's that old classic saying, isn't it? An iceberg is the tip you can see at the top, and the bits underneath that you can't. And the bits that businesses are really aware of, things like gender and age and language, because you can see them. They're obvious, they're right in front of our face. They're obviously the easiest things to create an environment that changes the way that we work. However, there are so many more below that that may be quite hidden. And actually, if we don't foster an environment, or the businesses are fostering an environment that encourages different groups from the ones below, that's the people, the ones that are really alienated. Because you can make a conscious effort, even if it's not built into your culture, to address the top level, because it's obvious, and most people do want to create that environment. But the below element, you have to really probe and question and create environments where this is allowed to be the case. Now, I will send these slides around on request, and I'm happy to provide these. I think they're really important for you to think about. But I think there's much in there that I like. And I think there's little bits in there, the differences between belief and religion or values and heritage are huge factors that I think you want to be looking at when you're going into the market. So next slide is just a report that if anyone is interested in following up on anything D&I related, I'm happy to give you some links. Hayes provided a lot of reports, whether they are salary guides across any sector, 20 different sectors, whether they are tips for certain parts of any hiring process. But one of our reports is our diversity and inclusion report. We publish it every year, and so it will give you insights into sort of data and the capture analysis of what's come through that. It will different workplace cultures and how to make that better and more inclusive. Talent attraction, right? And whether you're looking for a job or looking to hire somebody, I think it's really important to understand that talent attraction process and how you foster a good D&I agenda. And then finally, career management, which essentially is why we're on here, right? So that report is available on our website. You have some links that I'll be sending around, and obviously we'll give you the ability to follow up as always. Right. So I think the next bit is on CVs, right? And now I think I've tried to give a bit of an insight into the market and what people are looking for and what drives us before I talk about this, because I think much of what I'll talk about here might now make more context for how you structure the way that you want to present yourself. I'll also do a bit of myth busting in here that I think is important, but I do want to caveat this with saying, this is an opinion of mine. Many different people have their thoughts on CVs. My opinion is based on experience, so I think I'm qualified. However, you may get contrasting advice, but I promise you, I've placed a lot of good people, so I think I know what I'm talking about. So, I think number one, I want to talk about structure, right? And the reason I want to talk about structure is because I think a good CV tells a story. I think people want to keep reading it, and like any story, if the first opening paragraph is rubbish, you tend to put it down, you want something else. The first chapter, you really want to be hooked in all the way through, and it's your responsibility to write your CV in a way that makes me want to go to the next level, right? Whilst capturing important information that makes you relevant for the thing that you're applying for. So look, number one, you need to tell them who you are right at the top of the page, your name, and give them an ability to reach out to you quickly if they need to. Address, phone number, and email. Without these things, you are not enabling yourself to get a position, right? Give your clients, your sort of job, your prospective employers, the chance to reach you, right? The next thing I want to talk about is profile. Now, this to me is the most important bit of any CV, and anyone that does not take the opportunity to write themselves a profile on a CV is wasting an opportunity. And the reason they are wasting an opportunity is every single part of your CV is the objective piece of information. It is the only, you have to put in the truth, and if you're not, then it's fraud. Whereas your profile is a subjective piece about why you should be employed by the person you're applying to. It's your opportunity to sell. Why would you not take that? It is your differentiation factor. And while we're in a candidate-driven market, whilst people want you, that's not always going to be the case. And you need to give people who've got the same skills as you a marginalised chance versus yourself about being employed, right? So how do you write a good profile? I hear you ask. That is the best question. So I think it's 2 sentences for three key parts. Number 1 is 2 sentences on who you are, right? And so that might be, and I'll take myself as an example, I might say 7.5 years of executive and contingent recruitment within the financial services, working specifically with FTSE 100 and FTSE 250 businesses, along with boutique firms across banking, investment management, hedge funds, whatever, right? That is me straight away. The second 2 sentences are what makes you relevant. So think about the place that you're applying, think about the job that you're applying for, and tell me why you're relevant. So I talked about tech before, the different languages in tech. So it might be, fluent in Python, C#, Java, across different platforms. It might be, you heard about financial crime responsibilities in relation to currencies. It might be an AML and KYC expert able to dissect complex cases across multiple jurisdictions. Makes me relevant for the thing I'm applying for, dependent on what I'm applying for it. And then finally, and this is the end of I talk about the narrative, I talk about story quite a lot. Finally, it's why are you applying, right? Tell me why you applied. I'm keen to work for a boutique firm. I want to be part of a larger business with more scope to grow. Yeah. Due to redundancy, that's fine. Yeah. Whatever is the reason you're looking, make it a good one. Unless you got fired, wouldn't mention it. But please, if you take anything away from this, is include a profile in every application that you make. Okay. One thing I might say, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. I often get asked the question around supporting cover sheets for CVs. Now, most sectors don't require this. Where it differs is if you are applying directly to certain businesses. But if you're using an agent, cover sheets necessarily aren't required. Because actually, as an employer, I'm looking for relevance. And I'm going to assess a lot of the other things at an interview stage. Right? So most of the time, cover sheets aren't important. What they are, actually, cover sheets is a much more elongated profile. And so don't include a cover sheet, but keep your profile punchy, and keep it what I've asked you to, and I promise you'll get an uptick in the app interview you recently. Next bit of a CV should always be the qualifications, right? Now, I think qualifications are really important, but keep it relevant, okay? So I think if you've been to university, you need to include that with the specific dates, okay? And then if you had, and then obviously the high school ones, secondary school, put those in. I don't need to know where you went to primary school. I just don't. I want it relevant. And actually, you know, if you've got a really good master's, a fantastic degree, I probably don't even need the secondary school in there. I really don't. I would rather see 3 or 4 very relevant, industry-laden qualifications, right? So if you're an accountant, tell me you're an ACA or an ACCA. You know, if you've got some really specific tech language that you passed tests on, I want to hear about it here. The fact that you got an A in maths at GCSE when you were 16 is less relevant, right? So your qualifications need to be as relevant as everything else in your CV. Plus, I want to keep reading. That's what I want to do, okay? But keep it consistent, keep it relevant, and always include dates. Because without dates, it creates ambiguity, and without ambiguity, you're opening the door to cynicism, which doesn't give a prospective employer a chance to give you a chance, right? Okay, so I think the next bit of the CV is obviously work experience, right? The number one mistake people make on work experience is that they always put the first thing on their number one, right? So number one is, so I work at this place, I said I work at Hayes, I've been here for 7.5 years, and this is my job title, that's fine. And then I start talking about what I do. The number one mistake people make is they tell me, first line, what they like about their job the most. Or they tell me the thing that they want to get out of their job the next time round, which says to me they're not doing that as much, right? What I actually want to know is what do you do the most in relation to the thing you're applying to, okay? So that's the number one I need to hear about, because that is what makes you relevant. Now, it's okay to understand what you want out of the job, what you enjoy, and that's something to educate your employers in the interview and talk about that and bring that through, okay? Please use bullet points. It makes CVs far easier to read, and for some positions, people will be looking at many CVs. If you use bullet points, it's quicker. People can scan through, right, yes, they're relevant, let's bring them into interview. If it's a big paragraph, it's a bit harder to get through. You're making it harder for me to like you. So please use bullet points. The other thing I would mention on this bit here is include as much as you can, but make it so you're looking for them to ask you questions about it, okay? So I want to know what you do so that when I bring you into interview, I can ask you about your involvement. So it's about what you do, not how you did it, right? Because how you did it is the interview, right? And that really gives you a bit of a tool to condense how you put things into your CV. And I think if you're looking for a baseline, between 8 to 10 bullet points is about appropriate. Anything less, I'd be saying, you know, tell me what 8 things you do at work. Anything more, I think you probably get to a point you're talking about too much. But if you're looking for a bench, I think 8 to 10, that's probably about right. Okay. A few things I want to talk about in terms of myth busting. I already mentioned cover sheets. People say that CV should be no longer than two pages. I don't agree. I think if it's over 2 pages, it's because it's all relevant. If it's under 2 pages, it's because it's relevant. Whatever it is, keep it relevant. I will keep reading if I'm looking for relevance. I've sent CVs that are 1 page, I've sent CVs that are 6 pages. And inevitably, the longer we spend in any market, the more you have to talk about that creates a relevance for a position. And as an employer, I want to know your relevance. And so if it's relevant, make it as long or as short as you want, but just make it easy to read, okay? Second thing I want to put in here about what not to do is do not abbreviate, right? And what I mean by this, I mean 2 things, abbreviations and acronyms. You want to explain every single time. And so when you're looking at dates, don't put Aug, put August. Don't put June, put July, right? I think it's really important that because it's a cynicism blocker, right? Just put the word and it just stops all of that sort of stuff. People want to read something in the language you've written, not an abbreviated version. I think it's really, really important. Please do that. And if you are in a sector that has multiple abbreviation words, I think, you know, particularly financial services, which I think a lot of this really might be involved with, is that you have words like AML that's come up today, KYC. AML is anti-money laundering, KYC is know your customer. Whatever these abbreviations are, explain them once because your client needs to know. The reason they need to know is because often abbreviations are commonly used for different things in different sectors. And if you're not looking at that, they don't know what you do. It can be ambiguous. And the more important reason is often someone is employing you to do something because they don't do it. If they can do it themselves, they probably are. right? And so by you using abbreviations of things that you know and think are common practice, sometimes the person that's interviewing or reviewing your CV doesn't understand the abbreviation in question. So just explain to them with a quick bracket. So if it's PEPs, it's politically exposed person, close bracket, and then continue to use that abbreviation throughout your CV. That is fine, but keep it easy to read, keep it relevant, right? Finally, I think what I would say is use the space that you've got. You know, I think too many people put loads of spaces all over the place, all that sort of stuff. I think just use the space that you have effectively and allow it to read. And then also, one more important thing to mention, I almost missed it and I looked down the card, is hobbies and things like that are really important. But I think, unless they're really interesting, don't put them. I don't need to hear that you like travelling or that you're a foodie, because let's be honest, we all like holidays and dinner. Right? However, if you are a grandmaster of chess, put it in. Why not? That's a really interesting topic to talk about. But so if your hobbies and interests are really interesting, and obviously we all think we are, put them in. If not, please do leave them out. Please do grab me if you want any further comments and CVs. I'm more than happy to assist on this. I've done it for many of my nieces and nephews, and frankly, they were annoying about it. Here we go. So I think this is the bit that I'm really excited about it, and I think this is probably the most important bit, because I think interviewing is terrifying. And I commend anybody that does an interview, because it is honestly a really pressure-fueled environment. Now, I've got a lot of time to spend on the slide, but I think I tried to break it down to make it a real dissectable process. Now, what I will say at the start of this is what I would call a standard interview. It doesn't mean that every single interview you will have will follow this structure, because what you'll find out is a lot of people are really bad at interviewing people. So, is that actually this is a really good structure of what tends to happen with most interviews you go to, right? It will also give you the tools to align yourself to know what you should be saying in certain environments, right? So number one, first 5 minutes you can see from my clock, and it's the image stage. Now, I call that image intro. It is the only opportunity you have to engage in a small talk situation with the person who's going to be interviewing you. Now, in the old world, that would always be, waiting in a waiting room and then walking to your interview room and all that sort of stuff. In your new world, you're dialing in, I get that, but please invest the time in having some core questions that you want to ask people that are going to build personal relationships. Now, and have them ready, because otherwise you panic, right? So if it's a Monday, ask them, how was your weekend? If it's a Friday, have you got any weekend plans? If it's a Friday, don't ask them about the weekend plan, they've forgotten about it, right? So, and I've seen people make these mistakes, but have a few questions ready so that when you're walking around the corner, you get into that room, and when you sit down in that room, or you start that interview, you're more relaxed, but they already like you, because technically you might be the right person for them. But if they like you, you've got a better chance of getting that job. Take that opportunity. Someone walking silently or even waiting to ask questions about what's going on has got less of a chance of getting a job. It's just it's one of the most important things. You only get one chance to make a first impression. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Okay? If you're really looking for some really boring ones, stock ones, you got any holiday plans, how long you've been in this office, how you find doing all these video interviews, all that sort of stuff. It's there's loads and loads of things in there. You'll see we're like nice people. I'm sure you're not going to struggle with small talk. The next stage is what I call the pitch stage. Now, this is them actually talking about themselves, 90% of the time. So for 5-10 minutes of most interviews, they are going to do what I'm doing now, talking about themselves for too much, right? And they're going to talk to you about their own careers, they're going to talk to you about that company, they're going to talk about that opportunity. I love that. It's going to give you an opportunity to think about how you're going to structure your literal answers into contextualizing what you do for them, okay? And so it's them giving you the scope and the leadership around things that we talked about before. So here are the opportunities, here's the opportunity to have for other people, this is what culturally we're like, this is what we've done in our DNI. Even if they're not said in those ways, they are pitching to you, because they brought you into interview because they like the look of you. So then I'm going to pitch to you a bit before they do anything else, because they want to get the best out of it, right? Next stage we call the validation stage, right? This is when they actually get a bit tougher. This is when they're going to push you. And I put a little question mark, and it's going to be 10 to 15 minutes and then questions, okay? And that is exactly what I mean by that. They're going to push you on what you do. And this is when you need to know your CV. The good news is, this stage has actually got easier, because what questions are, is they are always questions based on your CV. And you wrote that CV, right? Now, in the old world, you can't take your CV in with you. But in the new world, most first stage interviews don't have a video. You should always just print off your CV and have it next to you and have it as a referential document of the words that you've written, so that you know what's going to come up, and have core examples ready to talk about of the things that you've written, right? Key things in here that I think are really worth mentioning. Number one, never say we, always say I. I do not want to know what the team did, I want to know what you did within that team. So if you're going to structure it in something you did as a team, tell me as a team, but tell me what you did within that. Because if I don't, I'm just guessing. And if I'm guessing, it's probably because I think you didn't do it, okay? It's always I, not we. The second bit I would sort of reference in here is, you need to take me on a story with your answers. Now, I'm going to give you a bit of structure here for answering any question effectively. And this was invented by, I think it was actually PwC. We've got a few PwC alumni here. So it was a STAR-based approach to answering questions. Okay. Now, STAR is situation, task, action, result. No? And I think the result bit is the bit that people always miss, because if you're asked a question, right? Okay. Number one, I'm going to give you core examples on what we've done, which is the situation. So this is the problem that we had. The task is, this is what we thought we would have, how we were going to fix it. The action was actually what you did, okay? This is where most people stop, and they forget the next bit. And they don't, they break down and they just stop answering questions. And it's the wrong thing to do. Because actually what I don't know is the end of that story. What I want to know is the result, okay? I want to know, based on the situation you just told me about, did it get fixed? If it didn't get fixed, tell me what you learned, right? I don't mind if it doesn't get fixed. Clients don't mind you making mistakes. They want to know how you learn from it, right? I think it's really important. So take the STAR approach to answering questions, and I promise you concise ways to answer it. 2 sentences on each is enough, but if you need a bit more depth based on technicality, I'm sure you can delve in and be smart enough to react to that situation. But I think if you do that every time, I assure you you'll give a good account of yourself. Okay? Final bit is what I would call the alignment stage. Now this is the point of client. Is I'm going to like you or they don't. Now, if they're not doing the alignment bit, probably means they don't like you. Okay? And what they're then doing is they're taking what you've told them and talking to you about how that might work in practice for them, and saying, how would you approach this scenario? Okay? So, in the context of a business that you're applying, I know you've worked here, and here we do this. How would you put what you've done into practice here? Okay? That is because they're looking to fix and understand how you would operate that business. That's a good sign, because they're already picturing you doing it. And so, in this moment, they know that you don't work there, so it's okay to say things like, I've never done that before because it's different, but based on what I've done, this is how I would approach it. Because they know that, they can see it from your CV already, okay? But that is what they're doing. So if they're asking those sort of questions, take it as a good sign. It might be the hardest questions to ask, but they're asking because they like you, okay? Finally, close, right? Now I've got some other points to talk about that will come into every single section I've talked about. And they're like lots of tips, not anything else. But the final section is not on here, and I didn't put it on purpose because it's a close, right? Any salesman will tell you this, but you need to close every single time. And if you not dare to do that, it's just going to dwindle out. And sometimes you need to take the reins in these scenarios and help them down that path. Now, the way to close effectively is they're always going to say, have you got any questions? You need to have 3. It's not okay to turn around that scenario and say, actually, all my questions have been answered. No, that means you're not interested. Have I heard that? I'd be like, this person really is interested in finding out about this business, about this role, and thinking, how interested are they about working with me, for us, with us? And I need some questions, okay? So some good ones to ask. Do you mind going into a bit more detail about the culture of the firm? What's the reason the job came available? Right? Could you tell me more about yourself? I'd love to understand more about your journey. Who doesn't like talking about themselves? I promise you, how many times you get to talk to someone about what you do and they're genuinely interested about hearing about it? Right? So in that scenario, people love talking about what they do. So there's some little ones in there. Just have some questions ready, be armed with a few. But even if they have been answered before, you need to ask some questions. It demonstrates interest. At this stage, they want to hire you, so if you're demonstrating interest, you're there. And at the end of that, make sure you thank them for the time and then revert back to the start, which is, enjoy your weekend. Whatever plans you talk to them about, like, I hope you enjoy that round of golf you said you were going to, I hope you enjoy that holiday in Spain that you said you were going on, whatever. Make sure they realise that you were listening at the start and you reference that to close, which again, it shows you were listening the entire way through, which ultimately is a really big factor. Right, so some bits to mention, and I've written a few on the left-hand side, but I think some bits that I haven't mentioned that are on there, I think are really important. There's 3 things you can assess at interview: skills, knowledge, and attitude. This is not a revolutionary statement from me. You'll see it in every single interview preparation book on the planet. Skills and knowledge can be taught, attitude can't. So it's the only thing that you can demonstrate during the course of an interview that you are the right person based on culture. Okay? So be very aware of that. So if someone has amazing knowledge, amazing skills, but they're a terrible person, I'm not going to hire them. No point. Can't make them any better. But actually, if they haven't got the knowledge, but they've got some decent skills and a bit of good attitude, I might give them a chance. It's the only one that I won't flex on. You most importantly agree with me. Okay? Right. Okay, so number 1, if you don't know what the company do not waste your time going. No point. And the easiest way to answer that question is every single business, in the private sector, let's say, particularly, is there to make money. That's how they pay those wages. So if you want to know what a company does, try and ask yourself, how does that business make money? Yeah? And if you can answer that question, it's the foundation for finding out more and more about it. Okay? And use that. It is not the business's responsibility to tell you what they do. It's yours to find out. Okay? And that is the question you're answering. What do you know about the job? Okay? You've got a job spot there. If you're using an agent like myself, apply directly, push. If there's something you don't understand in the job spec, find out. Right? What are the deliverables? I mentioned that when we're talking about flexi working and how you want to foster that relationship moving forward. But ultimately, I think it's a really important thing for you to understand what that job is, why you're relevant, and how you're going to be successful within it. Sounds simple, but I promise you, it does falter. Number 3, which again links back to the profile thing, you're going to expand upon this in your interview, is why are you there? Okay? Now, it's much harder to answer that person than it is when you're writing it down in your profile, actually. And I think there's some real key things here. If you're leaving your current role, often it will be for something quite negative. Whether your boss is a horrible person, whether you've been got fractious relationships with the team. It could be for positive reasons. It could just be because you've got an opportunity. You should never answer that question by talking about the negatives of the situations that is behind. You bring the conversation back to them. So you say things like, I've had a really good time working at X, but I'm ready to leave because this is the opportunity that I want, right? And you reference the things within that job and that company that make them go, they're here for the right reasons. And the way to ensure that you get that right is you reference things that are impossible for this employer to counter with, okay? So if you work for a mega institution and you go into a boutique, it's like, I don't want to be part of a big place anymore. I want to be part of a small institution where I've got a broader scope. If you see the way around, you work at a small place, you want to be a big place. I don't want to be somewhere where it's quite boutique anymore. I want to go for somewhere much bigger, untapped opportunity. Whatever the narrative is, you can define that, but you look for a reason that that job is perfect for you, that they can't deliver on before where you are. Because then it gives my employer, potential employer, the confidence that if I do offer you the job, you're going to take it, right? If you do or not, that's your prerogative. As I say, why you're interviewing if you're not, but that's the scenario, you know? Finally, I think there's a strengths and weaknesses section here that I think is important mentioning. I think this is probably one of the most terrifying parts of an interview, and I promise you, whether it comes up or not, in a literal sense, strengths and weaknesses are always asked, okay? Strengths are demonstrable things and skills that you are going to bring to the table, and I've categorized them for you here, right? So you've got people skills, your client focus, let's call that stakeholder engagement rather than client focus, whether that's internal or external stakeholders. Commercial awareness, again, how does that place make money, and how am I going to drive those commercial activities? Technical and operational effectiveness, influence, motivation, right? These are really good strengths because they're all contextualized for a specific thing within that business that then you can bring to the table. However, and I stress this, give it examples, right? And I mean this wholeheartedly. But like if I told you I'm as good as David Beckham at free kicks, you know I'm lying, probably, because I'm in recruitment. However, if I evidential give you a reason why I'm those things, it becomes truth, okay? So give me a story. So if you are exceptionally motivated, don't just tell me motivated, give me an example of why you've gone above and beyond, yeah? If you are wonderful at influencing people, give me a business-based example based on a star-based approach where you've changed somebody's mind for the better of the business. Whatever it is that you are saying is your core strength, give me an example about why that's the case and how that's going to be in practice for us. Weaknesses. Now this, everybody gets wrong first time. And I promise you, I've given this advice to people who are taking their first job, and I've given this advice to people who are set with MD or C in their title, and you'd be staggered about that people are getting it wrong. Your weaknesses is always the same thing. It is the thing within the job spec and the job you're applying to that you currently don't do. No other thing. Because already what they're looking for in this is for you to have a self-reflective understanding about your position. Okay? And so within that, it might be, you're running a team of 3, but this is running a team of 10. And so you say, look, my probably biggest weakness is running the size of team that you're looking for to hire. I've run a team of 3 before, I think I'm really good at it. I'm looking to do something on a larger scale. The interesting thing about that is, people are scared to tell them that. But they already know this because it's in your CV, and they're just looking to make sure that you know what's in there. If you're looking for a job, and already 100% that job you can do, you shouldn't be applying to it. You're not pushing yourself to go to the next level and develop your skills. There's always something that you don't do in any job you're applying for, and that's what you should be going to do. I think to make that a simple breakdown is that there's that old law, isn't it, the 80-20 principle, right? I think it's back to it's a lot of old Greek times, right? And I think the one commonly used in modern day is 80% of the world's wealth is managed by 20% of the world's people. Whether that's true or not, I don't really care or know, but in this context, you can say 80% is what you do and what you can do in that role, and 20% is the bit that you don't. And actually, if you're falling down the 75-60% level on the bit that you already do, you're probably not qualified for that job, right? But if you're looking at 95 or 100%, then you probably should be looking at taking the next step up, okay? So assess what you don't do in the job that you're applying for, tell them back, okay? The other question that comes up a lot nowadays, and it's similar to the weaknesses one, is that clients will often ask you, give me a time when you made a mistake. And if you can't answer that question, you're lying. I've made plenty. But what I'm looking for in there is to be honest, reflective, and tell me the time you made a mistake. Tell me how you learned from it. Tell me how to change the way you operate. And tell me how you really got to the state where you can now talk to me about what you would do differently. Okay, and so it's similar to the weaknesses one, but it does get asked quite directly with quite a lot of employers on a regular basis. But hopefully this will give you a bit of structure for typical interviews. Okay? Now, we are now in a world where video interviews are almost exclusively used for your first date, which makes some of this a little bit harder, frankly, because you don't get that same opportunity to walk around the corner to do the intro, and the closing is sometimes be a bit in and out. But frankly, sometimes tech lets us down, right? The only things I can suggest is take the opportunity that you've got to the point that you can create an environment that is unique to you to give yourself more comfort. You no longer are sat in a glass box in an office delivering an interview in a full suit. You sat there at home in whatever you want in the waist down, right? In a more comfortable environment. You can surround yourself with things that they can't see to give you cues on the things that you want to talk about. Take that opportunity. I just don't know why people wouldn't, okay? And the final thing I would say is practice, right? If you're not used to doing lots of video-based talking, FaceTime your parents, FaceTime your friends, FaceTime anyone you want, or through any platform that you want. Lots of people haven't done it a lot. Do it more and more and more, you'll find that conversation style much easier. It's paramount, and I promise you, recently, if ever had a client is they didn't turn their camera on during the interview, and they were better technically than the other person, but it created an environment where we're a bit skeptical, so we're going to offer the other person. And so please do get it right, okay? But look, much of this will remain the same. People are still interviewing in the same way, we're just doing it in a digital fashion. So again, there's some questions at the end for CVs and interview techniques, but I think that probably I've also got to say on that one. Okay? Right, so this is like how you sort of go into the market and how you sort of analyse who you partner with. Now, I'm not going to make this too complex. I think there is two ways you apply for jobs. You apply directly to a business, or you go through an agent like myself. And look, there are differences between them, which I'll get into. But ultimately, I think you're looking to assess the same factors every single time, right? So let's start with the agency, but you can relate it back to the business, okay? Quite scary being in a new place, not knowing who to approach. Here's some real key ways to do it. Take your job title, put it into a generic job board like Indeed. Indeed, it hosts loads and loads of jobs, and it's a website that pulls all the vacancies in the UK that have been advertised onto one platform, just waiting for you to search on it. So take your job title, take the job title you're interested in, and put it in there. Whatever agency or business is advertising the most, it probably means they're pretty good at it. And they're the people you should be getting in touch with, right? I get phone calls about me helping them in compliance recruitment because I advertise a lot of compliance, because I do a lot of compliance. So I advocate for the same. It's there, it's available, it's easy to ascertain, okay? Second thing is, look for some referrals. If you know where you want to work, ask. Do not be afraid. Often people have really bad experiences with some of the headhunters out there, but there's some really good ones as well. Take the referrals. The best way to ascertain who's good and who's not. And honestly, if it's a referral, you're probably coming in with a bit of a softer landing anyway. Okay? Finally, if you're really struggling with all that and you can't do it, just go with the big ones. Because the boutiques are very specific to the ones that do specific things. So if you know who the boutiques are relevant to your specialism, great. If you don't, and you're really at sea, you don't know who to talk to, so approach one of the big ones. Might sound like leading advice, given that I work for one, but commercially I only make the money on things I do anyway, so I promise you it's not. So we are one of the big ones, but you've got others. So Hayes is my one, but you have things like Michael Page, you have people like Robert Walters, you have some really big firms out there that you can use who have multiple specialisms across multiple sectors. If you're at sea, just go to them. I assure you'll have a consultant that looks after it. Beyond that, it's an integration into a market over time. One thing I would say is when you are using an agent, don't use too many, but trust the ones you do use. Okay? And so I think I work closely with people who may partner with me and maybe 2 or 3 others max. I'm not asking you to be exclusive with me unless I'm guaranteed that I'm going to place you in the place that you want to be placed. Right? However, I don't like working with people who will send their CV to everybody, because ultimately your CV and you are a product to the market. But if that product isn't special, it makes you less attractive, and I want something a bit more attractive. I want to be able to sell something to my clients that they haven't seen before. But if you see who's in every agent under the sun, if you don't trust enough to do the right things with your CV, then you're going to find yourself in a bit of a sticky situation. So be open and honest with them, but be open and honest with the people you want to trust, right? So when you're there, it's okay to talk through that process. Ask them what type of clients they work with. We assess them the same way that you want them to assess you. Okay? Interview them just as much as they're interviewing you. Right? It's a relationship that you build, but once you've got someone you trust them to do the right thing for you, because ultimately, if you think they're the right person for you, they make their money once you're placed. So it's in their interest to help you. Okay? And if they're not, it's probably because they're bringing it for you, frankly. Okay? Applying direct to business, how does it differ from working for an agency? That's when cover sheets might come back into play. Sometimes big firms want cover sheets, quite laborious. I don't use them. I think sometimes you're a bit in a sea of people, and actually HR businesses, when they are seeing CVs for different roles, they're not specialists in those areas, so they can't assess you before you get to the hiring manager as easily. Well, look, there are some benefits. They don't have to pay guys like me, so sometimes that's a real benefit to them. I would say do it. I really would. I say to my clients a lot, if you can find these people yourself, you should. When you can't, that's when you call me. So if you see the roles out there with people, I advocate to apply directly to them. But there are things you lose. You then have to negotiate your own salary. You have to be constantly in contact with people who are doing multiple other functions, whereas the agent, if there's an opportunity to go through, organise so much that for you, and they can do it in lots of different places. The only other thing I would say is that if you go directly to somewhere, they're only selling that, whereas an agent is doing multiple things. So I think it has its benefits, and the main one to the client is it's cheaper, which frankly is the biggest factor. So I advocate that you apply direct where you can, but keep making you full access to the market. And frankly, not all jobs are advertising that way. Right? So find the agency you trust, but apply directly where you can is probably my advice. Understand everyone's role in the process. What I mean by that is, whether it's your agent, whether it's your HR manager, whether it's your hiring managers, understand what they want out of that situation. So in an interview, HR is going to assess you on saying things like, why are you here? What are your values? What are you going to add culturally? All that sort of stuff. Potentially you're going to cash. The hiring manager is technically assessing you. Yeah? The agent is selling to you. Everyone's selling to you, they're going to work there. Right? What is the reason they're there? How consultative are they? And why are they telling you what they're telling you? Is it advice that's for your benefit or is it advice for theirs? Understand that process a bit more and what you push them to push yourself to understand what their role is in that process. Okay? The final one I say is for those that are in employment, the thing I want you to ask yourself before you apply to anything is, can you get what you want out of your next job in the place you're already working? And if so, ask for it before you do anything. I say this to my people all the time. Don't bring a resignation in my face thinking I'm going to counter offer you. Tell me what the problem is, and if I can fix it, I will. If not, I'll help you with what you want to do next. And I promise you, you'll get more from it. There will be businesses out there that won't. Don't worry, I won't work. But there will be businesses out there that will wait for you to resign before you get a big counter offer. I would rather work for a place that offers me that environment, but it doesn't stop you then knowing where you are. So if it is more flexibility, if it is more salary, give your boss, your company an opportunity. And if they don't do it, then I tell you what, you know you should be applying for things. But take that opportunity, give yourself a chance. Okay? Okay, that's probably it a bit. Right, so look, that's probably the end of what I've got to say really. I think I'll finish with the same thing. It's increased by disruption. Really exciting time to look for a job. If you do any further, please do ask me some questions. And there's my contact details for anyone who does want to drop me an email with anything that they want to find out, whether it's based on what we talked about or anything else. Thank you very much.